Joseph had been sold as a slave to Egypt. Through ups and downs, he finally ended as the second to Pharaoh. He became a mighty man, and he got family, and he named his sons, and this is what he said. Let's read from Genesis 41, verses 51 and 52, and we are reading from the Revised English Version. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for, he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Welcome to yet another tidbit from the book of Genesis. I'm Dr. Paul Petersen, and you may, as me, stumble at the expression, God has made me forget all my father's house. I wonder how you would have felt being taken away from your family at the age of 17, and now for half of your life have been away, realizing or probably thinking, I have no chance of ever meeting my family again. This is Joseph's situation. And God now gave him another family, and he acknowledges the role of God. But actually, this latter part of the Joseph narrative from chapter 42 to 45 is a story of how he got his family back. It's a story about the reunion and reconciliation of a dysfunctional family. And from first to last, the hand of God was part of it. Joseph recognizes that. If you go to the end of this part of the story, to chapter 45, we will notice here where Joseph reveals himself and his identity to his brothers, that he also expresses God's hand. In verse 5 and verse 7, for God sent me before you to preserve life. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant, to keep alive for you many survivors. So, from first to last, this is the story about how God brought the family together again. And maybe we should ponder a moment. In a normal account of such a glory of Joseph, that is, being the second to Pharaoh, we might have spent a lot of time looking at his lifestyle, all his wealth and his riches. But this is not what the story is really interested in. It is not what Joseph is interested in. He wants family. And then the hunger forces the sons of Jacob, on the instigation of the patriarch himself, to travel to Egypt to buy grain. Chapter 42 tells how they arrive in Egypt. That was not uncommon for Semites to move into Egypt. Some also got administrative positions, and this was a natural place to go. It was not uncommon either to have hunger periods of lack of harvest in the area. To have it both in Egypt and in Palestine would be extra hard, but because of the prophecies of the dreams, Joseph had managed to gather and collect grain, and there was enough to sell. And then the brethren came. Now, not all Semites would be getting an audience with Joseph. We don't know why these were selected and how they were spotted, but that's part of the story that is not told. But then Joseph accuses his brothers, who of course do not know who he is, accuses them of being spies. He's testing them. and he's putting them into jail. This is like a taste of what they put Joseph through when they threw him into the well and sold him as a slave. So they would sense a little of what he experienced. And in verse 21, in chapter 42, it is said, "Then they said to one another." And this common sentence has been used just a few chapters before, in chapter 37, verse 19, when they see Joseph walking through the fields towards them, they say to each other, "Let's kill him." Now this phrase pops up and reminds the readers of that situation. They say to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother." They express their remorse, their guilt. They confess, and Joseph listens in. He knows what they're saying. They do not know that he knows. He probably has his spies down there to figure out what they said in the prison. And then the brothers add a detail which was not told in chapter 37. "In that we saw the distress of his soul, when he begged us and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." They did not show him mercy back then, and they are sorry, and they realize that they only now get what they deserve. The last part of the chapter introduces Reuben. Reuben, the older brother, who failed to save Joseph, now attempts to take upon a role. They are coming back to Jacob. They have some extra money because the money they had paid for the grain has been put into their sacks. Again, this is mysterious, but nevertheless they have them. But Joseph has demanded of them that if they are to return to buy more grain, they need to bring their youngest son Benjamin. That is not what Jacob wants, and Reuben tries to say, I will stand in his place. But Reuben disappears from the scene, and in the following chapter, when they are forced to go to Egypt again, it is not Judah, it is not Reuben, it is Judah who offers to be the safeguard for Benjamin. Now that leads me to a text in 1 Chronicles, which interestingly describes the outcome of the fate of these three tribes represented by Reuben, Joseph, and Judah. It is said in the first couple of verses in chapter 5 in 1 Chronicles, "The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but because he had defiled his father's couch, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, so that he could be enrolled as the oldest son." Now, Joseph got the first right. His two sons both became tribes in Israel, so that was a double portion given to the one who had the first right. But then it is added, "Though Judah became strong among his brothers, and a chief came from him." That is, the Messiah came from the tribe of Judah. So Reuben lost his birthright. Joseph got it, but the blessing through Messiah would be given through the tribe of Judah. Now let's go back to the account in chapter 43. The brothers enjoy a feast at the house of Joseph. It ends well. The next morning they leave Egypt. But once again, Joseph is testing them. The cup that he has used at the feast, a very valuable cup is placed in the sack of Benjamin. And the butler or steward of Joseph is asked to follow them, overtake them, and say to them, and we read verse 4 in chapter 44, "Why have you repaid evil for good?" This is ironic, because this is exactly the opposite of what Joseph is actually doing to his brothers. He is repaying their evil with good. Not evil for good, but good for evil. There's another ironic parallel, a parallel back to the event where Rachel had stolen the house gods of Laban, but managed to keep it a secret. And here you have Benjamin, who seems to have been stolen this cup of Joseph, though he had not. This is the reverse. They come back, they return to Joseph. And here Judah's character is shown. The character that was so drastically changed after the event with Tamar in chapter 38. And now Judah steps in and he says to Joseph, "Take me in the place of Benjamin." He is acting here as a willing sacrifice. This is the reason, I believe, that it is Judah who is becoming the heir to the blessing of Messiah. And then you have the great reunion. Joseph is not able any longer to keep his secret, and he cries and he embraces his brothers. He discloses who he really is, and they are shocked, but they are also forgiven, and the family is brought together again. What does it take to heal a dysfunctional family? And there are two sides of it. On the one side, remorse and acknowledgement of guilt and confession, and the other side, you have forgiveness, mercy, and grace. These are still the most important element when you need to reconcile two parts, two people, groups, or even reconcile God and human beings. And then the chapter in 45 ends with the story of how the brothers return to Jacob, the aging father, and tell the story. I trust much would have been said that we have not been told. Somehow they would have to say how it came to pass that Joseph did not really die. But it's told in verse 25, "So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob, and they told him, 'Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over the land of Egypt.' But his heart became numb, for he did not believe them." Sometimes good news are so good that you cannot believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived, and Israel said, "It is enough, Joseph, my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." And that is where we leave for this tidbit, but we will return to what follows next time. Welcome to that. Thank you for listening.